Kia ora, good morning. Just documenting my dream. Oh, excuse me. I just woke up. I'm so toasty roasty. Yeah, this was a bit of a weird one, but I understand what it means. So I'm documenting it so that you can learn how to interpret your own dreams. So as I keep saying, dreams are mostly a form of self-psychoanalysis. It's your conscience or your higher self doing an assessment, like a warrant of fitness check on your psychological mind, mostly. Some of it's predictive, some of it's guidance, some of it's connecting with loved ones. On the other side, like when I have my dreams about my Amber. So this dream was a bit out there, a bit woe, a bit way, but excuse me. I just woke up, I haven't had a coffee, I haven't been to the bathroom or anything, so I dreamt I was walking into the foyer of an apartment complex. It was a high-rise apartment building. Um, I mean, maybe not high-rise, but there would have been about maybe 12 floors, and I had to go up to the top, up near the top. Where I was staying was up near the top. And when I walked into the foyer, it was just full of people. But the weird thing was, they were all clones of each other. Some of them were sitting on the ground, some of them were standing, some of them were up against the wall, but it was just a sea of people. They all had the exact same haircut. They were all wearing the exact same clothes. They were all wearing black. They all had black hair. Some of them were sitting, some of them were standing, some of them were leaning up against the wall, but they were all being detained. They were all being stopped from going into the elevator. They weren't allowed to go into the elevator. They wanted to go into the elevator, but it's like they were waiting to be moved. It's like they were being detained. They had been given orders that they weren't allowed to go in the elevator, and they were waiting to not maybe see what happens next. They were they were all being detained. They knew they couldn't leave. They knew they couldn't go in the elevator. They were waiting to be told what was going to happen next. And I walked in, and I remember it was like even in my dream, I remember when I walked into the foyer, I felt the heat from like because there were so many people in that foyer. You couldn't see the floor, you couldn't see any furniture or anything like that. And as I was walking through them to get to the elevator, I could feel the heat from, all the bodies. From I could feel it on my skin, the heat. And it's like they'd resigned themselves to the fact that they were not going to get in the elevator, and that what was going to happen to them was out of their control. So they were just waiting to know their fate. I just walked straight past them. and the elevator doors opened up, and the elevator called my name. Debbie, please step into the elevator. And I walked in, and when the elevator doors opened, they opened on the other side as well, and I could see that on the other side of the elevator, there was also a sea of people, and they were looking into the elevator, and they were kind of looking as if to say, well, how come she gets to go into the elevator? And I stepped in, and I went to press the button to go up, and the elevator said you can't press the button up. The elevator's broken. You can only go down. And I was like, well, I don't want to go down. And the elevator said, you have to go down. And I was like, I sort of thought for a second, and I thought, okay, well, if I have to go down, I'll go down, but then I'll just take the stairs up. So I pressed the button, I went down the elevator, and as the door shut and I went to go down, how do I explain it? How do I explain it? I don't know how to explain it. I knew that if anyone else in the foyer got into the elevator was either going to take them underwater or into fire. But I wasn't scared. I wasn't afraid. I knew I was okay. So I pressed the elevator, I went down, I came out the doors, and there was no one there. It was all empty. And I just went up the stairs. And there was a lot of stairs to go up. But when I got to the floor that I needed, where I was living, I came out of the stairwell doors and started going towards my apartment where my boys were waiting. And I started being chased by a man. And I think he had a knife. He did have a knife. And he started chasing me. And I ran into my friend's apartment. I knew I'd be safe in there. I knew if I got in there, I'd be perfectly fine. So I went in, I locked the door, and then he vanished. And when I went in, I think it was the girl from my dream that I had, remember, with my ex, and he had all the black heads and white heads and stuff, and there was that girl when I was in the bed outside in the garden, and she took me to that house where I grabbed the girl. I think it might have been her, but it could. I kind of have this feeling she might have been a girl that I went to school with. She was my best friend. We were best friends for years, but she ended up doing the dirty on me. But I'm not sure. I wouldn't want to try and say what she looked like. I just remember she had long brown hair. And I handed her some weed, and I said to her, can you roll me a joint? And so she started rolling me a joint. I can't remember smoking it, but then I remember in the doorway, I was with my boys, and there was an ashtray, a lighter, there was some incense, there was some other things on the ground. There was some dirt, on a plate or something, and I was we were on our stomachs, looking out the window, looking down, looking at all the people who wanted to get into the building, who couldn't get into the building because there were so many people in the foyer, and my boys and I were looking down at them. And then I was like, oh, I've got to have my bath now. So I had to clean up all. I remember thinking, oh my God, this is a lot to clean up. But I cleaned it all up. And then I don't know where they went, but I went back into my friend's apartment and I was sitting on like a mattress thing that she had on the floor. And on her computer table that was next to where her bed was on the floor, there was this dial. And when I turned it, water came rushing out. And I thought I was going to have my bath until I realised that's not like that's not normal. Like if I leave the water running from this computer table, it's going to flood the bed and the bed's going to get all wet. So I turned it off and then I went into the bathroom and I filled the bath up with water and then I hopped in fully clothed. And then I woke up. So what does it mean? Well, as I keep saying, buildings in your dreams represent you and how you see yourself at the time you have your dream. And this was an apartment complex and it was a high rise one. Um, all the people, all the clones, the elevator going down into water or fire, but I was fine. Taking the stairs upstairs, taking the stairs, all of that. Long story short, it basically means that because I didn't follow the crowd, because I didn't do what was expected of me, because I didn't follow the rules of the coven, of the cult, because I didn't do what was expected of me, even though they tried to control and contain my experience, it didn't stop me from achieving my ascension. And that regardless of whatever I was put through by the people in my life, by the people who were gang stalking me, by the people who were following orders, I and the men who tried to control me, the men who abused me, because knives in dreams is it's cutting, stabbing, um, emotional abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse. I rose above it. I've risen above the abuse. I've risen above what the men who were brought into my life were sent to do. The man, he was crazy, he was insane. I knew he was a lunatic, and he had like a big knife. And when I ran into the friend's room, it was like in my mind, because it was the top, one of the top floors, in my mind, I knew I was always safe and that the smoking of the weed, depending on the drug, but I always dream about weed because in dreams, weed always means your spiritual development and connecting to Source, connecting to God, and your spiritual process. So me when I was being chased by the man and I stepped into the room and locked the door and was smoking the weed, it was talking about me rising above it and allowing myself, because I allowed myself to go there and I let other people watch, because I allowed myself to go down there. I didn't stop it, I allowed myself to go down there. I was then able to get myself out of it and rise above it and get myself to a place in my mind, which was going into her, where I was kind to myself, where I was good to myself. And because I was good to myself and I knew that in my mind and in my heart and my emotions I was safe, I allowed myself to do that healing where I learned to control my emotions, which is why her computer desk, I was turning that dial and the water was turning off and on, and then getting into the bath fully clothed means that I've learned to control my emotions and balance my intuition, because weed also means tapping into your intuition, but so does water. So, because I allowed myself to go there, it taught me to control my mind and my emotions at the same time, that it helped me rise above everything that the men in my life put me through, and all the people that they got to contain me, try and contain me. But in turn, they themselves got contained or detained, specifically detained. So arrests, maybe, because you get detained by the courts and the police. Um, but it was, when I walked in, it was spooky and eerie how they were all dressed exactly the same. Same haircut. They looked like the same race. Like they looked, yeah. I was gonna say they looked Asian, but I think it's because maybe like there's a lot of Asian people, a lot of Chinese people, like there's a lot of them, and that whole thing with Stone being in China, but I don't know if they were specifically Chinese or Japanese or anything like that. They just had the same black hair, the same black haircut, the same expression on their face, the same clothes. They were all wearing black, and it's like they all were following the order to just stay there, and that they were forbidden from getting on the elevator, but they were also scared of the elevator, because they weren't, because it was kind of like they knew if they got on the elevator they were either going to drown or burn. But I wasn't worried. So obviously water is intuition and emotion, and fire is either judgment or purification, but they were scared. So they knew that if they got into the elevator, they were either going to get fire or water or both, which means that they were afraid of being forced to have to look at things they didn't want to have to look at, like admitting their guilt and then being punished for it, going to hell, confessing, purification, confessing their sins, having to face the reality of what they've done, and then facing judgment. Whether that's from God or the law, I don't know. But I was fine. I was allowed to go into the elevator. I was being given protection and privilege that they weren't given. And it's like I was being, it was a test to see how I'd get myself out of it. And I was like, I'll just take the stairs then. If I have to go there, I'll just take the stairs. Knowing I didn't have to worry about the water or fire, but having to figure out how I was going to get to the top. So because I took a different route that was expected of me, I got to where I was going, and even though as I was rising above it all, I still had to face the reality of dealing with the trauma and abuse of the men who abused me, with their, because they, none of them were physically violent, but they were emotionally, mentally, verbally violent, so that's why it was a big knife, stabbing, cutting, doing things on purpose to try and hurt me, to try and scar me, to leave mental and emotional scars. and physical scars, which I do have from the abuse and neglect, and that I've got physical scars. But because I turned my back on it and got myself out of it, I was able to get myself to a safe space where I allowed myself to feel my feelings and control my thoughts and bring balance between my conscious and subconscious self, my emotions and my mental state. It taught me how to control both while my boys were watching, allowing my boys to see my process and then them seeing it from a higher perspective. Because we'd risen above it, we'd seen it, we were able to see it from a higher perspective, which isn't, also would be marijuana, seeing things from a higher perspective, because it releases DMT, and they call that the God chemical. So you see creation from a higher perspective. Um, so yeah, it's a good dream because it's God's way of saying you passed the test. Like you've you've gone through an experience where you've been able to rise above it and learn everything that you've needed to learn from it, and you've gone through your healing, you've gone through your grief, you've gone through your process. I've healed from the trauma, and now I know, especially when it comes to like when I do meet a man and stuff like that, I'll know the signs, I'll know what to do and what not to do, because I won't fall for sob stories anymore in order to be lured back. I won't fall for the pulling on my heartstrings, because that's what Chris and Martin and that used to do all the time. I know them. I know the game now, because all the clones, I just automatically knew. I knew, whereas they didn't know. And it's almost like they were like, boy, how come they were like, how come she gets to go into the elevator? So there's I've been around a lot of jealous people, a lot of jealous clones, like on the internet, who have been watching me in real life, who have been watching me, but they're all the same. They're all sheeple who have been told what to do in regards to me, so they've done it. And then they've watched me rise, and it's caused jealousy and envy, because they don't understand, well, how come she gets to do this now? How come she gets to be this now? And it's because I did the work. I was called and I did the work, therefore I got to ascend, because the elevator called me by name. I was going to the elevator anyway, but it was when I pressed the button and the doors open, it said, please enter the elevator, Debbie, or Debbie, step into the elevator. And they were sort of looking like, how come she gets to go there? So I knew even in the dream that me going into the elevator, knowing I was going to the top, means that I'd been given some kind of special privilege. And not just, because I'd been chosen to ascend and they had been left to deal with the consequences of their actions in regards to me, both by law and with God. But I knew that as a result of me being called into the elevator, I was then going to be stepping into something special that was privileged. Like I win an award, or not even just that I get the money from my court case, but like I've been chosen for something that not many people get chosen for. Or, well, yeah, I'd been chosen for something that very few people get chosen for. I'd been given some kind of special privilege, some kind of honour or special privilege that many people would want, but not many people would be granted. Like like an Oscar or an Emmy or a Grammy or something like that. You know, they have to go through a process of looking at thousands of actors, but only one's chosen to get the award. It was like that. All because I went there, I did the work on myself, I thought outside the box, I saved myself, I saw things from a higher perspective, I rose above it, I did the work while being watched by the clones. But I did it anyway. And I did it in front of them because I knew by the time I got to the top, they were all going to be held accountable for what they'd done. And because of that, I did the work on myself. Because of that, I got some special privilege, some kind of special award or privilege. The other thing was when I had to think, when I went into the elevator and the elevator said that I could only go down, I was like, I had to think for a second and think outside the box. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just use the stairs then. Problem solving, finding the answers to something. So what it means is, in having to do my investigation and having to think outside the box in order to save myself, in order to get myself where I needed to be, like morally, ethically, emotionally, mentally, legally, and it made me become everything God needed me to become. So, in having to do my investigations and having to do my own investigation, because I had to figure it out myself, I had to do it all myself, and then helping like the king and and having to do the investigations on myself and like on the king and that, and having to go there and just do it myself and figure it out myself. It helped me heal. It helped me rise above everything and heal. But it put me in the position that God needed me to be in so that I could see the bigger picture, which was me and my boys looking out the window. So I could see the bigger picture and know that that was always my purpose. My investigations was always my purpose. Using quantum magnetics was always the purpose, but I had to go through what I had to go through in order to fine tune my abilities to achieve God's goal of getting me where He needed me to be for the future. So, even though the outcome is going to be that I get to build my school, my whole reason for going through my ascension, my whole reason for having my blog, having my students, having the men in my life abuse me and all of that was for the purpose, being betrayed by the judicial system and the law and the governments and billionaires and the people controlling my social media, i.e. the clones, all the ones following orders, all the ones just doing the exact same thing in regards to me, was always for the purpose of me stepping into my power of being able to use quantum magnetics, and my investigations. My, my investigations are important somehow for the future. So, Or, I mean, yeah, it could be my investigations were important for the future because it's going to protect the king and save Great Britain. So, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I get it now, sorry. Duh. It's because I've only just woken up, I haven't even had a coffee yet. So, yeah, so I needed to go through what I had to go through with when I got my blog, all the men in my life, my students, clients, friends, family, exes, social media, the gang stalking and all of that, the corrupt legal system, the corrupt police, corrupt prime ministers and presidents and all. I had to go through the whole thing for the purpose of mastering my investigation skills and stepping into my power as a result of my healing process, because my investigations were had a greater purpose, which is, I think, saving the king, waking the king up, protecting the king from what they're trying to do. The very same people doing it to me, doing it to him. So I was always meant to do this investigation for King Charles. I've already done my one for Vladimir Putin, so I've retired from him. Like, he's sorted now. So yeah. So this was always meant to happen, because remember when my ex got me locked up, when I knew that he'd put the cocaine in the pizza, when I knew he'd drugged me, it was God that said to me, have faith and do everything I tell you to do. So that's why I just got into the elevator. I didn't even question it. I just got in. So, yeah. So basically, it's an extension of that day when God said, lock the doors, block them on your phone, and just do what I tell you to do and have faith. And he said, when you come out the other side of this, I promise you won't regret it. Um, so my destiny was always to develop quantum magnetics, which I did through teaching my students and having my blog. That's when I started developing quantum magnetics, because I was questioning the paranormal too much. And when I started figuring it all out, that's when I became a target for like Hillary Clinton and all the rest of them, because I was starting to expose the trafficking and the child abuse and, the grooming gangs and all of that. I was exposing it all. So I'm getting some kind of special privilege as a result. Chris, Martin, Armour, Yodok, like all of them, all the men that came into my life as a result of me having my blog, and from 2013 right up until now, the whole process has been about me mastering my investigation skills for a greater purpose of saving the King and Great Britain and the Commonwealth, and that, helping to tear the Illuminati down. And they know if they went down the same route, they'd end up going to hell. They'd end up suffering for it. And it's like all the people that are involved know that it's over. That, like my ex and students and everyone, they know they've lost. They know they're going to be held accountable, because they were being specifically detained and you're detained by the law, you're detained by the police, and they'd resigned themselves to their fate. They knew they were screwed, basically. They knew they'd been caught, or that they were going to be found guilty because the evidence was overwhelming, sort of thing. It was like that. So I was put through hell to save the king and the country who had turned their back on me while I was going through it. Well, not that the king turned his back on me, because he didn't know. He was blindfolded. So hopefully this means he knows now. So maybe I have woken the king up. But that was the whole point of me going through what I had to go through. And as a result, I'm going to be given some kind of special privilege, some kind of award or special honour, or I don't know. But from God though, not, yeah. God's going to award me some kind of special favour or special award, which in ascension terms usually means like you get recognition for being the master, like where they'll call you the guru, the master of, or it could be even that finally quantum magnetics gets recognised as a field of physics, because that's why I made my process public, knowing that I'd be ridiculed and judged and mocked and laughed at and sniggered at and all that, because I knew one day I'd step into my power and I'd be proven right about everything, and that quantum magnetics couldn't be denied. And all I've wanted is to have quantum magnetics be recognised, to be written about in journals, to be studied by other physicists, because it's the science that proves that God is real. You just have to change your view on who God is. Like in the Ethiopian Bible, I just talked about that before I went to sleep yesterday. All the stuff that they kept out of the Bible, because the church didn't want people to know that Jesus was saying you don't need churches, and saying that the people who shout the loudest, remember my mum used to say, he who stands on a street corner and shouts the name of the Lord does not make him a true believer. Jesus was saying it's never the loud ones who are the true believers in God. It's always the quiet, unassuming ones who have the real message of God. It's always, what did he say? The patient and the broken who have the closest connection to God, which is, going through your ascension process. It's always those who go through the ascension process. I've been saying it time and time again. God hates popes. Can't stand them. Cannot stand the Catholic Church, because they're worth billions, and yet they leave their followers to suffer in poverty. That's not God. That they're not men of God. They are not men of the cloth. I'm the man of the cloth. I'm a man of the cloth. Humble, i.e. the bicycle. Remember the dream with my sister wanting to paint the bicycle. Men of the cloth are always humble. They would never dream of wearing silk robes with golden thread and hand-stitched leather shoes. It's an insult to everything that God and Jesus stand for. If you have access to billions of euros, you're expected to give back And the Catholic Church don't do that at all. They have priceless art on the walls. They have millions and millions of pounds worth of, property in their portfolio. And yet their followers are going in there hungry, cold, broken, poor, constantly being told have millions of children. It's like Bob Marley said, the poorest people in the world are the rich. Poor people are rich. Rich people are poor. Poor people are rich because they're rich in faith. So, whereas rich people lack faith. And in the Ethiopian Bible, it's everything I've been saying. Jesus said they're going to change my image, they're going to change my words to suit their own narrative in order to have control over what people think and how people connect to God. They're going to keep things from them to keep them away from their true God, which is everything I've been saying about, who wrote the Bible and why. They admitted they wrote the Bible wrong. The people that wrote the Talmud, they admitted they wrote it wrong to confuse people. That's sad, because greedy and selfish, wanting the knowledge all to themselves, but it's not working in their favour. Because now, unfortunately, what's happened is all Jewish people are now being condemned. And Judaism, in its truest form, is a really beautiful religion. I personally don't believe in religion, and even Jesus says, get away from religion and just talk to me yourself. You don't need a temple, your heart is your temple. He literally says that in the Bible, your heart is your temple. Worship me there, which is everything I've been saying. But yeah, because of the seeds of a bad few people, they're now being condemned. The same with Islam, the same with Christianity. It's always the seeds planted by a few bad people that poisons the crop for everybody else. But in the Ethiopian Bible, Jesus is saying, step away from all of that. Step away from the sheeple mindset and just do it yourself. When I was a kid and I told my mother I don't want to be Catholic anymore, that I want to see if God is real. So when I was 16 and she said to me, you'll be back, and I said, yeah, I don't think so. I was terrified that if I stepped away from being a Catholic and claiming to be Catholic and denouncing the Catholic God, that I was going to burn in hell. I really thought he's going to come after me. And then by allowing myself to go there and not fearing the consequences, I walked straight into meeting the true God. So, the dream. You could look at those clones as people who are too afraid to step away from religion, even to step away from the cult of religion for the fear of the consequences. Whereas I wasn't afraid to go there. I remember people being mortified when I said, I've told mum and dad I'm not going to be Catholic anymore. Just being mortified. Oh, you're going to go to hell, like damnation, blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, but I had to know. And then I denounced him altogether. And then when I started having paranormal experiences in that as a teenager, sort of 16, 17, 18, 19, studying the experiences and then doing my readings and figuring it all out myself and then stepping into quantum magnetics to prove that God wasn't real, I did prove God wasn't real. I proved that the religious version of God wasn't real, but the ascension version of God, the atomic version of God, is 100% real. But in order to figure all of that out, I had to go through that process from my life. I had to go round the back and figure it out myself. And when I did that, I mastered quantum magnetics and stepped into my power. And has allowed me to see, rise above everything in order to see the bigger picture, which is what I've just figured out after I've interpreted this dream, the bigger picture. It was always about me mastering quantum magnetics, because I was always destined to save kings and countries with my message, which is what Jesus talks about in the Ethiopian Bible. So I'll put a link in the description box of the thing that I posted about the Ethiopian Bible, but have a read of it. And if you've been following my word and following my message in that, it's quite like, oh my God, she was telling the truth the whole time. All of it's real. This whole thing's real. Because it's like Jesus says, it's not the ones prancing around the streets shouting and professing and I'm the Pope, I'm a cardinal, I'm a bishop, I'm a priest, I'm a this. And, with their robes on, it's always the girl in her giant t-shirt and bare feet, sitting in poverty. That is the true messenger of God. It's the unassuming one that's saving the world, saving the souls of those who are seeking salvation, not the Pope. The Pope's not saved anyone. I've saved hundreds of people because I went there and I did the work and I followed in faith and I listened to the voices in my head, and now it's saving kings and presidents and countries and hearts and minds and broken people. So the doctors were wrong because they were faithless, even though they professed to be Muslims and Christians, and that I proved them all wrong. You need that voice in your head to guide you, because that voice in your head is your conscience. So they diagnose these people with various forms of mental illnesses, when in actual fact they're trying to shut them out of their connection to God and their higher self. Just like the people who wrote the Bible, these doctors and that don't want people thinking for themselves. They don't want people figuring it out for themselves. They don't want people not needing them to give them the answers. Because then if they can't control your spiritual development, if they can't control the connection you have with God, you might find God and then heal yourself. And they don't want that, because then they can't be a drug dealer with a medical degree. So, if anyone out there's been diagnosed with a mental illness because you claim to speak to God or your ancestors or the universe or whatever, you're right, they're wrong. And I've just proven it. Everything they tried to do to me, everything they tried to say about me, for all those years, they've been proven wrong. So they tried to kill an innocent messenger of God because they didn't know God's messenger when they saw it. Had I have turned up dressed like the Pope, they wouldn't have entertained the thought of locking me up and shoving poisons down my throat. But because I turned up in bare feet and a ripped t-shirt and talking about a science that was over the top of their head, they decided to condemn me and try and kill me. Now, one thing that I want to say in regards to that dream I had about my sister and the bike, when I said that, um, I won't have any, I won't have anything to do with my family anymore. That might seem harsh, but what people need to understand is they were trying to kill me in that hospital, and I very nearly did die. If it wasn't for BJ, I very nearly did die. I was being starved, I was being tortured, I was being denied medical treatment, and my guts was falling out of all the scars in my body that had been given to me because of the neglect and abuse of my ex-husband. If I had have died, I had no one. My ex made sure that I had no support. That cult made sure that before they did what they did, there wasn't a single person I could go to in the United Kingdom for help or support. I was barely able to make contact with my sister because my human rights were denied. I had to declare myself a political prisoner. Um, had I have died, I went to my brother, and all I was asking for was enough money to get me and my boys into a hotel until I could get money sorted to go on government assistance, just until I got back on my feet, because they weren't going to let me out until I had somewhere to go. They wouldn't let me go back to Chris because they knew he was abusing me, even though they didn't defend me to the cops. The doctor actually said, he literally said, I can't let you go back there because of what he did to you. You're not safe there. So we need to help you get sorted to get you back on your feet so you can get your own place in that. You've got no money to go anywhere. If you had money to go somewhere, then you could go and you and your boys could be safe in that. The police officer that filed the false report even handed me on a piece of paper the phone numbers for a shelter for the boys and I to go into. But then when I got locked up, suddenly all the notes and reports changed to make me look like I was the knife-wielding lunatic, which is another reason why the knife in the dream was significant, because Chris said that I had a knife, and it's not even true. I had the whole thing documented. It's all on video. It's all on my YouTube. Um, I went to my brother and I said, could I have money to get into a hotel to rescue me and my boys? And he said no. My brother he made some excuse about, I can't get money out of my pension. My mother-in-law's moving into the house, blah, blah, blah. But I was only asking for like a few £100, just long enough to stay in a hotel for a few weeks, because they told me it could take up to 6 weeks for the benefits to come through. So I just needed for me and my boys to stay in a hotel for about 5 or 6 weeks, just so that we wouldn't have to go into a shelter. Because I was trying to avoid us being put in a domestic abuse shelter, because my husband Martin was put in one as a kid, and the stories that he told me, like, traumatized me, like I did hell on earth. So, and my brother said no. Driving around in BMWs and Mercedes and Audis and, got like, and yeah, my own brother, my own flesh and blood. I helped babysit his kids, and he said no. He went to visit my abuser though. He spent money to get on a plane and come and visit my abuser, and I was on the other side of town, and nothing. Which means that had I been left to die, had I have actually died, and I was on the brink of it, my kidneys were packing up. They know that because the doctor came in. or the red rash that I was starting to get on my face and body was because of malnutrition and my kidneys were packing up. I was riddled with infection, my skin was rotting, I stunk of rotting flesh. My heart was giving out, I was being starved, I was on the brink. Had I have died, I would have been buried in an unmarked pauper's grave. I would have been just thrown in the ground and covered up with just a little plaque with a number on it or a name. And my family would have left me to rot in the ground in an unmarked pauper's grave. That's how little they cared about me and my safety and my boys. None of them even went to the aid of my boys. They left my boys in the hands of the man that tried to kill me and stole all my work. And that's why I don't want to deal with them. That's why I had to, in order to be good to myself, I had to cut the cancer out. And they were cancer. They they sat and gossiped about me. They spread lies. They they helped try and put me into the ground, and then had um, no care or sympathy for my two sons, my two babies. Zero, zero. My baby was going to his aunties, begging for help, and the only person that jumped into action was my sister Erin. So she's the only person I consider family. I was messaging cousins just to have general conversations and being completely ignored, like I was the embarrassment of the family. So they were all the same. They all thought the same about me. They've all had to watch me rise. And they're all going to be held accountable for what they did by God and by the law for the ones who broke it. So they're being detained. They're being stopped. They're not allowed to go where I'm going. I had to rise above it and leave them all behind. So don't think for 1 second that if you've had to make the decision to walk away from your blood relatives, that it's a bad thing. If it's to save you from harm, abuse, torture, mental torture, I part of that dream, the computer desk, because the computer desk is significant because it's the symbol of it's basically social media, internet, YouTube channels, everything done over Wi-Fi and broadband. Posts, videos, social media, that sort of thing. The internet's the only way that I have been able to, because I'm in a different country to everybody else. And so my only form of communication is via the internet, which is why they keep trying to shut my phone down. Turning the valve on and off, having complete control. I'm the one that's in control now of my emotions and my whether I do or don't communicate with people, like I'm the one that's in control now. I've got complete control of my emotions and my mental state. They're in perfect balance. I did the work. I've healed from it. I can explain things in a way now where, see, whereas the old me would have been in tears while I talked about all this sort of stuff, but now I only cry when I'm feeling God's love, like when I'm talking about something that's really beautifully emotional for me, or when I'm talking about my Amber, because I just lost her. So, it's understandable tears. She's crying because it's tears of joy or tears of grief, but not tears of anger or sadness or disappointment or, you know, because it's toughened me up. I've learned my lessons. So it was a beautiful dream. And now it's helped me explain everything. And now you know, like now you get it. Now you know. And now I know that the whole point of this whole thing, pretty much my whole life really, was to get to the point where I could master quantum magnetics and use it to save a king, to save a president, to save countries, to save the minds and hearts of people who didn't know that there was another way to do life outside of what doctors and world leaders and your social circle and social media and Elon Musk and that tell you is the way to do it. There's an alternative way to heal without it involving anyone else telling you what to do or how to do it. Just follow my voice. So I'm going to go now and have my coffee. I thought the stream was only going to be like maybe a 20-minute video, but even I didn't know. But that was the weed in the dream, eh? Tapping into the God consciousness. So yeah, different drugs in your dream mean different things. So yeah, I always only ever dream about weed because it's the drug in the dream that is the good one to dream about. All the other kind of drugs are the bad ones to dream about. But yeah, so anyway, and I've got no weed in my system. You can test me right now. I'm don't do that sort of stuff. My CBD should be arriving today. So with any luck, it means that I'll be able to deal with this pain. I'll be able to get up out of bed and stop the hot water bottles and deal with this pain. So, because it says it's specifically for pain. So, that'll be the only thing I'll have in my system other than the oregano oil and my mushroom vitamins. So, yeah, I'm drug free. I'm also toxic free. I'm abuse free. I've risen above it and it feels bloody beautiful. So, yeah, high as a kite. Risen above it. See it from a higher perspective. I'll speak to you later. I'm going to get a coffee. Ka kite anō. Mwah.